let's just say, for instance, you and I have a room of 100 people. We've been told there is one person in here that is a bona fide 10xer. We've got 60 minutes to identify that person. Could we do it? And how would we do it?
I'm gonna choose our techniques and the best CTOs, fairy tales in the comments. So start a few big names and the visions unfold. How many CTOs will share their stories untold?
What are we doing here? I forgot.
Yeah, that's a great question. How many CTOs does it take to get a podcast started, Brad?
Welcome to another episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. I'm Brad Hefta-Gaub. This is my co-host,
Scott Porad.
and we're here to talk about the challenges of being a CTO, leading engineering teams, getting the best out of developers. And you and I were chatting recently, Scott, about the question of velocity. And one of the conversations that came out of that was we talked about the idea of, I think that when business owners say, I want everyone working, I want velocity. I had the hypothesis that I think they all want every engineer to be a 10x engineer.
Hmm.
And I think you said to me at that point, well, what exactly is a 10x engineer and what are the attributes of a 10x engineer? So I figured
Yeah.
let's talk about that. What do we think a 10x engineer really is?
Well, let's answer that question. And I think we start with a different question, which
Okay.
is, do we believe that it's true that there are 10x engineers?
I do.
I do also. Okay, easy. Well, okay, now we move on. Onward. Okay.
Yes, I think I mean, well, like what is it you've said to me before, like objective measures are one thing, but oftentimes we know it in our gut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that yeah, my gut is like, yeah, there's engineers that I've known and worked with in my career where it's just like, yeah, that engineer, that guy or gal gets stuff done like way more impact than
Hmm.
everyone else on the team.
Yeah. And what is, so I think, yeah. And what is it? What are the parts of that?
Yeah.
If we were going to make a scorecard to evaluate checklist, what would we put on it? Well, I have a few thoughts. I'll kick us off. Let's
Yeah,
go
kick us
back and
off.
forth. We'll ping pong it back and forth.
Sounds good.
I mean, the first thing you have to say is that some people are just smarter than other people.
For
Like,
sure.
I cannot dunk a basketball, but LeBron James can dunk a basketball. We both
Whoa.
play basketball. Just because LeBron James and I both play basketball. He can dunk, I cannot dunk.
Right.
Other than that, we're totally the same. And the reason he can dunk is because he is taller than me by
Yeah.
about a foot.
Yeah.
And so now that's a physical capability. I would, I said LeBron and I were the same. That's probably not true. He probably has a better natural gift, intuition for basketball
Well,
than
he's
I
also
have.
done tens of thousands of more hours of basketball in his lifetime than you have in your equivalent lifetime.
It's 100% true. And I would then flip it around and say, I probably have a more natural intuition for how a computer works than LeBron. No, I've never met LeBron. He might be running his own network at his house, totally nerding out on his own time, whatever. I have no idea. I think probably not, but he might be. But like I have more of an intuition for how computers work. He has a more intuition for how players tend to run around a basketball court.
I think that's probably because of, like you said, like how much time you've put into it, how much interest you paid in it, how much, it was a curiosity that you had early in your life. It was a curiosity he had early in his life, probably. And so my
Yeah, but
instinct
I
is,
think I think there's a this is a nature versus nurture question. I think there is a nature piece there.
all right, I'm willing to accept that for the 10x engineers out there, there's probably a component of nature that exists in these 10x engineers, which I think is your point.
Yeah, that is my point. That's
Okay.
exactly my point.
Okay. And then I was kind of like leaning on the nurture piece of it. But I also think there's probably a nurture piece. So if you're going to ping with nature, I'm going to pong with nurture. And
Yes,
I think
agreed.
that the 10x engineers that I have known, the 10x engineers that I've worked with in my life had this just innate, unstoppable curiosity and interest in writing code and making computers do cool shit.
Hmm.
And um and probably like if you sort of assume all engineers have at least some of that, the 10x engineers had that thing, this idea that they couldn't stop just thinking about engineering, thinking about making computers do things. That was dialed
Hmm.
all the way up. So that's my pong to your
Okay.
ping.
Um, I'm going to add something to that with so many things. Oh gosh, I got like a list of things in my mind. Actually, I want to pause for a second. I think I've worked with less than half a dozen 10Xers in my career.
Yeah, that's what I think we had a podcast about this where we were talking about velocity and this topic came up, and we tried to estimate the percentage,
Yeah.
and I threw out a very small number, 1 in 1,000. You sort of said I think it's closer to 1 in 100, and then I kind of I took that challenge and I was like, yeah, I guess out of the thousand or
Yeah,
so
maybe it's a little
engineers.
higher, but yeah, okay. So it's very, all right.
But I think a dozen or 2 dozen is right. Like to me, I feel like I've worked with 1,000 engineers in my career over the last 30 plus years, and I would say like, I feel like I was at places that attracted really amazing talent, and it still
Yeah,
was, you know, 20 of the people I worked with would be really in this category that I think of as 10x engineer.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so you talked about they just have a desire to do it. I'll come back and say the best engineers I've worked with have an under an abstract understanding of how different technologies are tools for different jobs. Now they don't always they're not like always using different technologies, but I'm thinking of one in particular, and he could very easily articulate like, okay, well, this is what Java is good at, and this is what C Sharp is good at, and this is what Python is good at, and this is what Ruby's good at. And the reason they're good at that is because the reason they could say those languages were good at those things is because the 10Xer even sort of knew the history. Like, oh, look, Java was really, it was these bunch of guys, they were working in C++. That was their reaction to challenges they faced there. So they love it so much, like you were saying, that they even know because it is an evolution of ideas. They know that and they can articulate that as well. But I think knowing how those things work so intuitively, then in turn allows them, the combination of the two things we're saying here allows them to use these tools in really creative and powerful ways.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with that. That's a great one, and I feel like I'll ping back off of that one with something similar, and I think this is going to be a little controversial, but I'm gonna go out on the limb on this one. The 10Xers that I worked with, they all had really, really good computer science fundamentals. Now, many of them got there through classical computer science learning, like they had a computer science degree. But what I really mean by that is like they understand what an operating system really is doing. They understand what memory management is all about. They understand the idea of, you know, how what data structures. Like they really
Hmm.
understand these things at a really, so like we think about like the classic like computer science degree. It's like you take a data structures class, you take a languages class, you take, and that languages class exposes you all different types of languages. You take a operating system class, you take a compiler class where you build a compiler. These are
Hmm.
the classes that are in a traditional computer science program, and you didn't necessarily have to get that degree, but you have gotten that fundamental education. So I feel like all the 10Xers I've worked with just really understood that stuff very well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. Okay, here's another one. They all are capable and are very effective actually at working independently. In fact, actually, they might even their strength might be working independently. I have to think about that one for a second. Um,
Interesting.
but the notion of going and sitting down at their computer and, to use an expression, hammering something out, like
Hmm.
they're good at like, I'm gonna go get this done, right?
Yeah.
And often I'm thinking of one person in my, because we joked about this person the rest of us would be talking about something, and this person just was over at their computer and just did it, right?
Yeah.
They have a some sort of internal intangible quality of just getting a thing done.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I agree with it. You sort of said two things there. One was the sort of like the desire to just get it done, the innate quality of just getting something
Mhm.
done, hammering it out. And then you sort of added in this uh
Independence.
independent model. And I
Yeah.
I think that's true. Like I think when I really think about the 10Xers that I've worked with, they all functioned very, very effectively by themselves, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't necessarily mean they aren't good at working with an organization, with a group of people, and with a team, but they
Mhm.
are really good working on their own.
That's right. That's all I was trying to say. I would actually say of the ones I'm thinking of, they're actually all really good at working with each other too, and they all like to do things like pair program. Like, in fact, I think in general they think two heads is better than one.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. So they're completely effective at working on their own and hammering something out, and they are also uh, very open and collaborative in working with another 10Xer.
Yeah, yeah. Or teaching. They're all good teachers. The ones I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I think that's fair too.
Okay, it's
Um,
ping back to you.
all right, so let's see. I believe that all the 10Xers I've ever worked with were also really good at understanding the objective, the assignment. They were good,
Hmm.
and I would mostly say that's like they were good at understanding the needs of whoever the customer or stakeholder were, um, even when those needs might be a little bit more ethereal, like, oh, I'm just trying to make this super fast, RAID disk system over a network or something like that. That's
Hmm.
not necessarily like I'm talking in the customer language, but they really understood the fundamental problem of what they were trying to accomplish.
The listener cannot hear me nodding my head vigorously in agreement with that. I was gonna my your pong back to me. I was gonna say they're very good at taking whatever requirements are handed to them. I would actually branch it in two ways. I was going to say they're good in taking the requirements and turning it into a plan, but I would actually say that here's another piece that they're good at. Frequently, requirements are unclear. Customers, users, whatever, aren't very good at articulating what they want. Good at sort of
Yep.
synthesizing that together and sort of saying, okay, I think what you're saying. Sometimes they don't even say this. They think it's like, okay, I think what this person is saying is this, and then turning that into
Right.
something and often coming back and saying, "Is this what you want?"
I
Uh,
built it because this is what I knew you wanted.
yeah, there's definitely that. So, it's interesting coming back to the independence point. There is some EQ there.
Yeah.
There is definitely some EQ.
Huge EQ. Huge EQ. And I think that like if as we're still continuing down the road of like what are examples of the attributes that these 10Xers that we've worked with have, um, I don't want to get into the realm of like, oh, and if you don't have that, then this is a place you might
Yeah,
get stuck on becoming a 10Xer. But I will say that like that EQ piece, yeah, I've seen some people that are right on the cusp of being 10Xers, but they're missing that piece, and that's keeps them from really achieving uh, the potential.
yeah. Okay, let's see it. Oh, I just pinged EQ, so it's ponging back to you.
Oh man, okay,
Well, while you're thinking, I want to go back to the very first thing you said to fill some time.
all
They
right,
love it. They
they
love it.
love it,
This is fun,
they love it. Yeah, it's not work to them.
right?
It's like it's fun. They love it. It's a challenge. They love
Hmm.
that. They love learning new things.
Yeah.
They're absolutely the first people to be interested in the new
Hmm.
language. Because it's like for them, it's all like, oh yeah, let me learn about this new tech that may in fact solve a piece of the puzzle that is always
Hmm.
out there, right? They recognize, yeah. Okay, I feel like well, okay, I want to if you're ponging to me with the EQ and I feel like I want to say there's I kind of jokingly want to say they type hella fast, right?
That's
But
true.
it is actually true though, right? Like they're all really fast at writing large amounts of code.
For sure. I've worked at multiple companies, by the way, where we have, for fun, we have had what do you call it when you have a speed typing contest? I don't, there's a name for
Yeah,
it. I don't.
it's typing speed type test.
Just yeah, yeah, for sure.
one of my favorite one of my favorite 10xers that I worked with. Such an amazing guy. He was at Real Networks, kind of like one of the lead architects of the early streaming servers. He went on to become the founder of Isilon, and then um, big success there. His name's Sujal Patel. He's an amazing guy. He is such a fast typer, so fast. But I would say, and if Sujal ever listens to this and gives me crap about it, I'll have a smirk on my face and say, "Yep." Uh, he wasn't necessarily the most accurate typer, but he was such a fast typer that he would type stuff, it would be wrong, and he would delete it and type the correct version before you would notice that he had typed it wrong.
That's
He was
great.
that fast of a typer. He was just like, and I swear, like his backspace key or his delete key, whichever operating system he was on, that was the one that was the most worn out.
Okay, so some of the 10Xers I know, and some of them not. It's not a universal trait, but some of them definitely have that engineer thing where they think they can do something in an hour. I think
Oh,
I
for sure.
sometimes I see this. We talked about a strength as they can see a solution quickly, but sometimes it misses some of the edge cases. And it's like, oh, I can get that done in an hour, and then they get into it, and it's like, oh, actually, there's a little more here to it than I thought. I've definitely seen that.
But you know what's funny about that? The corollary
Hmm.
of that is that when that happens to them, they love it so much that that doesn't knock them off their game. They just go, "Oh, and then I had to solve it," right?
Yeah.
And they come back and they're like, "Oh yeah, it actually took me 3 hours, not one, because I found all these other corner cases that I also had to solve."
We haven't talked about this. I've assumed it. It's always excellent technical design. Very rarely do they make errors in technical design. I mean, I can think of one 10Xer I know who made a really big error in technical design. Still give him a hard time about it, but in general, the technical design is spot on out of the gate. Because I think that goes back to the nature piece I was talking about earlier, which is they just have an intuition for designing things
Well,
well.
by the way, one of the things one of the things that this notion that they are great at design, the notion that they have great EQ, the notion that they sort of just have this ability to understand the problem. Those that like that matrix of attributes that we're talking about clearly indicates that a 10xer is not about just writing code, right? Like just give a bunch of tickets to an engineer and have them write that
Mhm.
code. Um, that that's not a 10xer.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's not necessarily about how quickly they complete tasks.
correct.
And I think that's a misnomer that people assume that, well, if you just had 10 extras, then 10 times more tasks would get done than are getting done. Um, it's sort of a side set of that, right? Like they solve things better. They solve things more efficiently.
Yeah, and I would use the word that came to my mind, and I know I use it a lot, is leverage. They solve things in ways that make it easier to solve future things, or potentially
Yeah.
solve a bunch of future things that we don't, you know, it starts to embroider upon over engineering, but like they solve, you know, maybe solve multiple problems in one, and they think in a more abstract way,
Yep.
which I think drives a lot of that efficiency. Not only can they do this task more efficiently, the way they solved this task made 10 tasks down the road
Yep.
more efficient.
I agree with that 100%. Um, Let me ask you, do you feel like have we enumerated the key attributes that matter, or do you think there's more?
We've enumerated a lot of them. I what I was thinking about was it had a room of let's just say, for instance, you and I have a room of 100 people. And we know we've been told there is one person in here that is a bona fide 10xer, and then everybody else just is, you know, on the spectrum of you know, the bell curve of talent, right? And it's our job. We've got 60 minutes to identify that person. Could we do it? And how would we do it? I'm essentially getting at the interviewing and the recruiting question, which is how do you find these people?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. It's a little okay. So I feel like I want to say you know it when you see it, but let me give an example of kind of the know it when you see it things that I'm used to seeing. Right, like that that thing that we mentioned that it's just insatiable on their part. They're so curious that it's so fun for them, right? Like they can't stop thinking about
Hmm.
code. Like that comes out very quickly when you ask them about the code that they've written, right? Which is one of my
Hmm.
favorite interview questions is, tell me about the coolest piece of code you've ever written. And
Yes.
the
Yeah.
10Xers come out with that. The answer to that question, right, is just filled with technical nuance. You can see them light up when they're talking about the technical nuance of what they solved. They speak fluently and fluidly about the problem that they were solving and why that was an interesting problem,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
even if they're not necessarily like they don't even necessarily have to be the most eloquent, but you see it immediately and hear it immediately in the way they talk about the problems they've solved that were interesting to them.
Hmm.
That's my answer. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'll add to that. Do you know Joe Heitzberg from Seattle here?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He's been around a while now. He's currently organizer, the organizer of the AI Tinkerers
Okay.
Meetup,
Yeah. Yeah.
which has chapters all around the world. He's a real tinker. He's a great guy. And a long time ago, I was talking to him, and he was telling me how he loved to hire CS students right out of school. And I was saying, "Oh, Joe, I find it so hit or miss. You never know what you're going to get." I was like, how do you do it? What's your secret for finding?" Well, and then he's like, "Oh, well, I found just great people, great people." I said, "Well, what's your secret? How do you find them?" He said, "I asked them, what is the biggest or most meaningful, I'm not sure the right word to use, project that you've worked on outside of school?"
Yeah. Totally.
And when you find the kid that's running the eBay of Bangladesh from his dorm room, you're like, boom, I want that guy.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Totally.
um,
Yeah. That's very so.
and
It's
those,
so similar to the question I ask and the types of answers you're looking
right,
for. Right. Right.
that's right. Yeah, so yeah, I guess one way you filter out is you say find ways to identify who loves this.
Yeah.
Right. So here's actually a way I would put this on the list. Who considers themselves thoroughly fluent in two programming languages? Because for me, y- you know,
And you're saying that as
having
opposed to
learned,
one or at least two.
yeah, as opposed to
Yeah.
one,
Yeah. Yeah.
at least two, right? As opposed to one.
Yeah.
Because when you work with the second one, at least from my personal experience, and I think I've talked to others about this, when you work with the second language deeply, you get a better understanding of the computer, right? Right, is
Well,
what's
by the way,
actually
this
happening
is
with
why this is
the language is like a shadow, and like it's the shadow of the computer kinda, and you get a better understanding of the actual computer.
100% agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why I think that like one of the most valuable courses in that computer science degree, if you're taking a formal computer science degree, one of the most valuable courses is your languages class. Because the whole point behind
Right.
that course is it's about exposing you to all kinds of different types of languages, like
Mhm.
functional languages versus, procedural languages versus, it's like so important to understand like the types of shadows that can be cast on the computer, to use your shadow analogy,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay, so here's another question I would ask. I don't know exactly how I'd frame it, but something like this. I would go around the room and make every person write down things that they're religious about when it comes to this kind of work.
Oh, interesting. Okay, tell me about how you then filter that information.
There's certain types of things that people are religious about that are a signal to me that, oh, actually their understanding of this is not very sophisticated,
Okay, fair
right?
enough.
I'm going to use a popular one in our industry as an example. I'm not sure it's perfect. Tabs or spaces.
Yeah, totally.
Like, hey, actually, in my view, tabs or spaces doesn't matter as long as everyone just agrees on one or the other, because the problem is the mismatch, right? Um, and so I think you could get a sense by what people are religious about to understand their actual talent as an engineer, right?
I think that's fair.
Um, I'm not sure what I would actually be looking for or not looking for, but again, it comes back to I see what I know. But I feel like I'd see green and red flags. I'd see things like, oh, that's smart. That's real, real smart what that person's saying. And I'd see things where like, that person's being religious about something that I don't think that somebody should be religious about. And now maybe it's me, of course.
I feel like one of the I'll tell a quick story about that, the kind of the tab spaces thing. I remember the very first time I became a manager of a team, and I was still pretty junior engineer, but I had, risen through the ranks, and people were like, "Yeah, this guy knows what he's doing," and the team needed a leader. And I went to one of the more senior engineers on the team, and I was kind of like, our code base is kind of a mess. We don't really have any kind of coding standard. It's kind of, Joe's files look totally different than Bob's files. It's like kind of pain. And he's like, yeah, we should definitely have a coding standard. And I said, cool. You're super experienced. What should we do? And he's just like, well, I would accept any coding standard. And I said, wait, don't, but I'm asking you because I really think you're an expert. And he's just like, well, this is what I do at home in my own time. And we could do that and I'll accept that. But
Right.
that's very different than our existing code base.
Hmm.
It's our existing code base is closer to this standard over here. And
Yeah.
I'd be happy to just use that standard.
Yeah.
And at first I was like kind of like, "Ooh, what?" I didn't understand because I was so used to, like my own code, like cuz I wrote a lot of code,
Hmm.
And so I kind of was opinionated about my code, but that was a total eye opener. I'm glad it happened early in my career because I was just like, "Oh, yeah, you know what? You're actually right. Doesn't matter what the coding standard is so long as we all stick to it."
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what kinds of things that a 10xer would be religious about, actually,
Yeah.
or that a not 10xer would be religious about.
Well, I think you're right that, worrying about unimportant things is probably something that um, a non-10xer would be worried about, would be
Hmm.
religious about.
Well, actually, here's a piece of it. Do you think 10xers, an attribute of them, is that they actually don't have a lot of religion,
I
right? They're
actually think I might say that that might be their attribute. I think that their
yeah,
attribute might be that they don't have a lot of religion, because they are exposed to so many things. They're so curious about so many things that they're going to be way more ecumenical, just in
or
general.
to go way back to Kevin Goldsmith, it
Depends.
depends,
Totally.
right? Right. If you wanted me to, if you want the code to appear exactly the same everywhere it's printed, I'm going to be religious about spaces.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Totally.
Um, so okay,
Well,
so
so
we got our room of 100. We got our room of 100, and what have we done to figure out who the 10xer is? We've asked them what they're excited about. We've asked them what they're religious about.
and we've listened to them. And
Yeah,
if what comes out of their mouth is not like technically fluent, clear examples of EQ, clear examples of understanding, real computer science fundamentals, clear examples of them just being incredibly passionate about learning new things and doing stuff, then they're filtered out immediately.
yeah. Okay, I got two more attributes
Okay.
that I'd look for. I don't know exactly how I'd test for. Every 10xer I know, I hate to use this phrase, but has a can-do attitude. Oh, we can do that. We
Oh,
can figure that
100%.
out.
100%.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to do that. Right?
Yeah.
They're instantly like they're already solving the problem. They're not talking about like, oh, I think this is a bad idea, or I don't think we can do it, or that would be too hard. They're instantly like, oh, okay, let's see how we can right to solutioning.
I agreed. 100% agreed. And like sometimes it can be really, really incredibly. I've got, I can imagine. I remember some stories of like, you know, um, 10 extras that like the CEO says, we need to do this hard thing. And I'm like, man, that's going to be hard, but I'm sure we can come up with a solution. I'm going to put Darren on this problem. And,
Right.
tell Darren, and Darren's like, yeah, okay. That's going to be hard, but I can see a path. I'm going to go, I have an idea.
I
I'm
can
going to go
s-
attack it.
I can see a path. That is to me that is the thing right there. I can see a path. They understand the system, they understand the technology. In their mind, they have it. And so they can, oh, so that actually leads to a question.
Yeah.
And this gets fundamentally at the microservices, service-oriented architecture question. In order to be a 10xer, do you have to understand kind of the whole system, whatever that system is? It could be one component of a bigger system, or it could be at the kind of enterprise, the whole system. And to flip that around, if that's true, then is it the case that perhaps some environments, perhaps if you've got, say, a multiple million dollar, not dollar, multiple million line of code monolith, that somebody comes in and it's just a huge footprint surface area to understand, that we actually have environments that make it harder to have 10xers because you can't see the solution right away.
So
You see what I'm saying?
I want to pull on that thread a little bit because I actually think you're onto something. I'm going to go out and say one of the attributes of a 10xer is even with the most complex systems, they are able to keep almost all of it in their head. Like
Yeah, it's
they really do understand the full breadth of the platform. And and when they first show up, you can't stop them but going and figuring out the whole breadth of the platform. Like
yeah.
it will just be part of their own personal onboarding to a code base. Is they will just like
Mhm.
they will like go digest the whole thing.
Right. So to the extent that we can make that easier,
Yeah.
that we can increase the probability that there are 10xers. Well, this gets another question. I was going to say we increase the probability that there are 10xers in our midst, and so that would imply something like a 1x or a 2x or a 3x or all the way up to a 10xer, and maybe someone who's a 4x. Can you change where you are on this scale?
Well, that's
Does
what
it
I would
vary?
that's what I think would be a really interesting way to pivot this conversation. Okay, so we got some of our listeners are listening and they're developers, they're young in their career, they're listening to us old CTO types and they're listening to this because they want to know like what can I learn from these two jokers, right? And they might be asking themselves, okay, that sounds like somebody I want to be. I want to be a 10xer. What do I do? How do I become a 10xer? What do I need to do to become a 10xer?
Understand the whole. I would say without a doubt what you were just saying. under Understand the whole system. And in fact, for any of those, actually anybody, I'll offer a tip of advice. There's a framework out there called the C4 model. I think it's called c4model.org. It is not rocket science. Okay, I'm not going to say anything that's genius here. It's just a framework for modeling a system. That's it. Just and from like there's four levels. I can't remember all of them. The lowest level is code. I think it goes like code, component, container, concept, or something like that. Did I get them right?
So close. Top one is
What were
system.
they? Oh,
You got it.
system.
Code to component to container to system.
Oh, concept would have been better. Then it would have been four C's, right? I thought it was the four C system.
I don't
Whatever.
know why
Um,
it says C4. I don't know why
yeah.
it's not.
It's just, trying to understand a system can get a little noisy because at one minute you're like looking at a method, and the next minute you're trying to
Yeah,
understand how does this service talk to the other service. And it's just a framework for how to kind of create those four levels and draw them in
totally.
pictures. Um, and so it's just a tool, kind of a simple tool for understanding a system. And I learned it from actually a guy we should have on this show, a guy named Jagun Rhymes. He was a VP of engineering type that I worked with a few companies ago. Um, he lives in Florida, and he taught we Jagun and I hit it off. And I'll tell you, amongst the reasons he taught me about this C4 thing, but here's why we hit it off. Here's how I knew I had a developer crush on Jagun before I ever met him. I get this resume comes across we're looking to hire somebody. I get this resume comes across my desk, and on his resume, it says all sorts of stuff. But one of the things it said, just one little bullet point in there, was like, he improved his team's estimation accuracy from X to Y. And I was like, oh, this is the only other person I've ever met in my entire career whose estimation accuracy is important. And it's so important that he put it on his resume. I want to hire that guy.
Love it. So how do you become a 10xer? So one, like
You learn the systems.
learn the systems, right? What do we think about learn computer science fundamentals? And I don't necessarily mean that with a formal program, but like you can pick it up, you know.
For sure, that's important. I would think learn good architecture and technical design fundamentals would be sort of more important because there's so such abstraction now. Like let's compare two scenarios. One person is using Ruby, like a very abstract language from how the computer works, and they really know nothing about how the computer works, but they can design really well, right? The other person is using C, not even C++, they're using C, right? So they understand how the computer works really, really well, but their design is terrible, right? I think I'd rather have the first than the second. I think the first person will
I agree,
get
but
more done and be more
yeah,
effective.
but the reason I say computer science fundamentals is I don't mean like go learn C, go learn a language. I don't mean that. I mean like, you know, you got to understand what's going on underneath in the computer,
Hmm.
right? Like how does memory work? How does the stack frame work versus RAM? Like if you're like if you don't if you're not comfortable in a debugger and you don't understand that when you open up the debugger and you set a breakpoint and you're looking at a stack frame, and what the difference between like stack frame, scoped variables are
Hmm.
versus memory that you've allocated as an object that's sitting in the heap. Like if that stuff's not fluid to you, you've got to get those fundamentals or if you're ever going to be a 10xer. And that doesn't matter what language you're using, whether you're using Java, JavaScript, C, C++, Ruby, they're all the same. That you need that. You need to understand that stuff.
Okay. Let's you said something, the debugger.
Debugger. Every 10xer I know uses a frickin' debugger.
Yeah, do the kids use debuggers anymore?
Some of them do.
Some of them do.
The 10xers
I
do.
love the debugger.
Oh my God, I was just so excited. I just got my new laptops. I'm setting up my new laptop and I was like setting up, proper React Native app building and, ran the Android simulator on this new machine and the first thing that happened was I was like popped up and I was like able to set a breakpoint in the debugger and I was just like I just had this moment of this just like washed with this warm glow of joy of seeing the debugger pop up and letting me set a breakpoint.
I don't know how to program without a debugger. I mean, I do, but like to me, like it's like I can't come. I mean, you get to go inside. You get to go inside the code. You get to walk. It's like John Malkovich's head. You get to go inside it.
Yeah, exactly. And, again, like, another, I just thought of another attribute of a 10xer that we didn't mention.
Hmm.
They're never satisfied with something working, but they don't understand why it's working.
Yes. Yes.
They're never satisfied with you know, works on my machine or could not repro.
I will say there's two parts of that. One's a little bit of an Achilles heel. So one part of it goes back to what we were talking about, understanding the system, which is like when there's part of a system they don't understand, they'll just intuitively or not intuitively, but naturally take some time to go figure it out. I didn't really know what was happening over there, so I just spent the afternoon kind of trying to figure out what was going on over there. There's
Did
another.
you tell us that story? Did you tell us that story a couple episodes ago about like the guy that was like debugging something? He comes back and he's like, how the hell did this even work at all?
Yes,
I had to
yes.
find out. I had to get to the bottom of how this even works at
He
all.
wrote a document that he shared around that how the F does such and I can't remember what the system name was called. How the F does such and such work. That's right. Yeah, that's part of it. Now there's a little bit of an Achilles heel there. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes the 10xer can head down that I want to understand it rabbit hole. But I would
Mhm.
say less when I say that out loud, I think to myself, but actually kind of less so than your sort of mid-junior engineer who gets lost there, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's partly because I think the reason that the 10xer goes down that rabbit hole but never gets lost down there is because that point that you made that they just are good at understanding the big picture of systems.
yeah.
And so they don't ever get stuck down like a maze because they're kind of always able to like pull their head up and look at the whole
Well,
forest.
that actually, you just brought something up very interesting. That an attribute I've seen is that they can zoom up and down really fluidly, right? They can be
Yeah.
talking to you at about business stuff in one sentence, and the next second they're saying, "But I think we should form the method like the, I think we should actually write it like this, like," zzz, and you're just like, "Whoa, you have a
Yep.
whole thing in your head that's
Yep.
you're in the debugger right now, or you're in the matrix, just
Yep.
like totally zooming around."
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, I think you
100%.
learn the debugger, you learn how to understand a system, you learn fundamentals, you learn the principles as a design. Um, Look, if you don't love it, maybe you can't become a 10xer, and that might be okay.
I think if you don't love, if you're not in love with it, then I think it's going to be really, really hard because it's a lot like I am confident LeBron James loves basketball,
Yeah,
loves it, loves it, loves it, and that's why he is LeBron James. That's one of the many important things that makes him LeBron
yeah,
James.
that's right. He loves it.
Yeah,
Um, what else is there? You got to learn how to work with other people. I talked about independence, but you got to know how to work with other people.
yeah,
And I have
100%.
a bias in this, which is I just think pair programming is the best way.
I think that I agree with that. I agree with that. I think there's so much value that comes out of that. And I 100% agree that like all the 10xers I know they're great alone and they're also great together.
Yeah.
And they're really great when they're paired with another 10xer. That's when sparks fly
Yeah, it's
in
probably
a
true.
positive way.
It's probably true. I want to get a room full of these people.
Yeah, they're
We should have a
I mean, well,
10x
but that's
conference.
a nice point, right? The 10xers they attract each other.
They do, for sure.
And I think 10xers are attracted to problems that are interesting to solve.
Oh, I just thought of another attribute of a 10xer.
Yeah, tell me.
To some degree, they're very independent minded, and to some degree, they march a little bit to their own drummer. If I'm thinking of the pool of like, as we've been having this conversation, there's like six people in my head. There's like a set of six people in my head that I'm like just continuously thinking about these people, and they're all. It's not. It's not hard to get them to do things they don't want to do, but it is a little bit of like wrangling cats.
Yeah, that's fair. You're saying they're the first ones to have gotten those split keyboards, for example. Not all of them, but the one of the 10xers, had the monitor turned to the side before anyone else, a a portrait monitor before anyone else did.
You know what? Of all of the 10xers I can think of, the group of six I'm thinking of, I don't think any of them had a split keyboard. But I do think that they all really knew their tools well. Whatever their editor or IDE was that they were using, they really knew it. And I'm thinking of
For
this
sure.
group now, like, I know of a guy, what's a IntelliJ? I think
Yeah, 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 totally.
I'm not sure, but
Yeah, that's one
I
of
think there
them.
was an IntelliJ guy, an Emacs guy, a Vim guy. They're all different. A VS Code guy.
Yeah, the Vim masters, the 10xers that were in Vim,
Well, they're playing above the rim.
they're they're playing above the rim.
But they all
You're
knew it.
right.
They all knew how to use their tools really well. They saw their tools as an
Yeah,
advantage. Um,
yeah,
I don't know about the keyboard part of it, but like they weren't doing the keyboard for show. They were using their tools to make themselves more productive.
yeah.
Maybe that's a question you ask when we have our room of 100 people. We're trying to figure out who the 10xer is. We talk to them about their tools.
Well, by the way, that's one of the reasons why I feel like that question I've been asking a lot more lately in interviews about talk to me about generative AI.
Hmm.
All right, tell me what you think about generative AI. And I am certain that the 10xers are not religious about Gen X, generation AI, generative AI. They're like, oh, they immediately have a conversation about it, and they see the places that it's a useful tool, and they see the places that it has weaknesses, and they're comfortable talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Helps them because, yeah, totally, totally, totally. Well, Brad,
Yeah.
we could squeeze the 10xer rock forever, but this has been a fun conversation.
I feel like we really got somewhere on this. Like this feels like it's fun to hear your interpretation of it. I can totally picture you in your mind's eye, like remembering all the 10xers you've worked with,
Hmm.
and like I was doing the same thing. I had their faces kind of floating by in my mind, and I was like, oh yeah, let me think about how did they behave? What made them different?
Hmm.
And so it's one of those things that you know it when you see it, and it's amazing when you get to work with them.
That's right. And I'm sure that's how people feel about getting to play with LeBron.
There you go. All right.
Well, with that, Brad, until next
Well, what
week,
do we say?
Smash, rate, and subscribe. Leave a review. Leave a great comment.
Yeah, leave 10x's comments.
Love it. All right, talk to you soon.
This episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.